I was standing in my driveway in Bend, Oregon, watching my brand new Firewood processor slice through a log like butter, when Linda Morrison came marching across the street with that look on her face. You know the look. The one that says she has just discovered the most egregious violation of suburban decency in human history, and appointed herself judge, jury, and executioner. "Excuse me," she called out, her voice already pitched at that particular frequency that makes dogs howl and men wince. "Excuse me, Zachary Owens." I killed the engine on my processor and pulled off my safety glasses. The machine sat there quietly humming, a beautiful piece of German engineering that I had saved up for months to buy. It was late October, and I was getting ready for what promised to be a brutal winter. My business, Mountain View Timber Supply, depended on having enough processed firewood ready before the real cold hit. "Good afternoon, Linda," I said, keeping my voice neutral. She was the president of the Ponderosa Heights Homeowners Association, a position she took about as seriously as a Supreme Court justice takes the Constitution. Maybe more seriously. "You have a permit for that." She pointed at my processor like it was a nuclear reactor I had assembled in my front yard. "A permit for what?" "That industrial equipment. This is a residential neighborhood, Zachary. We have rules about commercial operations being conducted on residential properties." I took a deep breath. My property was a corner lot, nearly an acre, with a detached workshop in the back. I had specifically chosen this place 3 years ago because the CC and Articus, those covenants, conditions, and restrictions that govern HOAs, explicitly allowed home-based businesses as long as they did not create excessive noise, traffic, or nuisance. I had read those documents cover to cover before signing. "Linda, I am processing firewood for my business. The CC and Articus allow home-based businesses. I checked before I bought the place." Her lips pressed together so tightly they practically disappeared. Section 12. Paragraph 4 states that no commercial equipment may be operated between the hours of 8 p.m. and 8 a.m., and all equipment must meet residential noise standards. "It is 2 in the afternoon," I said, "and this processor is quieter than most lawn mowers. I will be bringing this up at the next board meeting." She pulled out her phone and started taking pictures. "And I am documenting everything." I watched her circle my processor, snapping photos from every angle like she was a crime scene investigator. The machine was not even that large. It was essentially an automated splitter that could handle logs up to 20 inches in diameter. I had it set up on my driveway, well within my property line, and I was only planning to use it for a few hours a day until I got through my current inventory. "You do that, Linda," I said, putting my safety glasses back on. "I have work to do." Her face flushed red. "You have not heard the last of this." She stalked back across the street to her house, her sensible pumps clicking on the asphalt. I shook my head and started the processor back up. Linda had been a thorn in my side since I moved in. She had complained about my truck being too large for the neighborhood. She had complained about my workshop. She had even complained about the type of gravel I used in my driveway, claiming it was not aesthetically consistent with the neighborhood character. But I ran a legitimate business. Mountain View Timber Supply provided firewood and lumber to half of Bend. We were not huge, just me and 3 employees, but we had built a solid reputation over the past 8 years. I had started the company right out of college, working out of a rented yard on the south side of town. 2 years ago, I had saved enough to buy this property, which let me consolidate my operations and save on rent. The processor chewed through another log, spitting out perfectly sized pieces that would season nicely over the winter. I had contracts with several businesses in town, including 3 heating companies that supplied wood stoves and pellet stoves to residential customers. They bought firewood for me to offer as part of their service packages. My phone buzzed. It was Derek Chen, one of my drivers. "Hey, boss. Just finished the delivery to Cascade Heating and Cooling. They want to know if we can bump up their order for next month. Something about a big promotion they are running. How much are they thinking? Double their usual. Maybe 15 cords instead of 7. I did some quick math. Tell them yes, but I need confirmation by Friday. I will need to adjust my processing schedule. Got it. Oh, and the owner mentioned something about an HOA customer giving them grief. Wanted to know if we did compliance deliveries. What kind of compliance deliveries? Something about HOA rules requiring covered storage. I told him I would ask you. Sure, we can do that. Have him send me the details. I hung up and went back to work. The afternoon sun was warm on my back, and I fell into the rhythm of feeding logs and stacking the split pieces. This was the part of the business I actually loved. There was something meditative about working with wood, transforming rough logs into something useful. By 5, I had processed about 2 cords and my back was telling me it was time to quit. I was wheeling the processor back into my workshop when I noticed Linda watching me from her front window. She was on her phone, probably already mobilizing her HOA board members for an emergency meeting about the dangerous industrial operation happening right under their noses. I parked the processor in the workshop, a 30 by 40-foot building that I had built the year after buying the property. It had required HOA approval, of course, which had taken 3 months and about 50 pages of documentation. Linda had fought it every step of the way, but the original CC and Articus clearly allowed accessory structures up to 40 by 40 feet, so she had eventually been forced to approve it. Inside my house, I grabbed a beer and sat down at my kitchen table with my laptop. I pulled up the HOA portal and checked the meeting schedule. The next board meeting was in 2 weeks, which meant I had at least that long before Linda could try to pass some emergency resolution banning firewood processors. My email dinged. It was from the HOA, with Linda's name in the sender field. Dear Mr. Owens, this letter serves as official notice of a violation of Ponderosa Heights HOA covenants, conditions, and restrictions. On October 23rd at approximately 2 p.m., you were observed operating industrial commercial equipment on residential property in violation of Section 12, Paragraph 4. You are hereby ordered to cease and desist all commercial operations immediately. Failure to comply will result in daily fines of $250, beginning October 26th. You have the right to appeal this decision at the next board meeting scheduled for November 7th. Sincerely, Linda Morrison, HOA President. I read the email 3 times, my blood pressure rising with each pass. This was insane. She was citing the noise ordinance section, which did not even apply to daytime operations. And she was threatening fines that would add up to $7,500 by the time the board meeting happened. I called my attorney, Marcus Fitzgerald. He had helped me with the business incorporation and handled my contracts. His office was in downtown Bend, and he answered on the 3rd ring. Zachary, good to hear from you. What is going on? I explained the situation, reading him the email verbatim. Okay, first thing, do not panic. This is pretty standard HOA overreach. Do you have your CC and Articus handy? I pulled them up on my computer and sent him the file. Good. I am looking at them now. Section 12, Paragraph 4, right. This is about noise restrictions during evening and morning hours. It says nothing about daytime commercial equipment operation as long as it does not exceed 85 decibels at property line. Do you know the noise level of your processor? The specs say 78 decibels at 10 feet. Perfect. That is quieter than most lawn equipment. Here is what we are going to do. I am going to draft a response letter citing the actual CC and R language and pointing out that you are in full compliance. I am also going to note that the fine structure she is threatening is not outlined in the CC and Artiques, which means it is probably unenforceable. The CC and Artiques have to specify the fine amounts, and they have to follow a progressive structure. How long will this take? I will have it to you tomorrow. Send it to her and to the entire board via certified mail and email. And Zachary, keep operating your business. Do not let her bully you into stopping. That night, I barely slept. I kept running the numbers in my head. I had 3 major deliveries scheduled for the next 2 weeks, and they all depended on me having processed firewood ready. If Linda somehow succeeded in shutting me down, even temporarily, it would cost me thousands in lost business and potentially damage relationships with clients I had spent years building. The next morning, Marcus's letter arrived in my inbox. It was 4 pages of detailed legal language, calmly and methodically dismantling every point in Linda's violation notice. He pointed out that Section 12, Paragraph 4 explicitly allowed home-based businesses, that the noise restrictions only applied to early morning and late evening hours, that my equipment fell well within acceptable noise levels, and that the threatened fines had no basis in the CC and Artiques. I printed 3 copies, sent the email to Linda and all 5 board members, and drove to the post office to send certified letters. Then I went home and fired up my processor. 2 hours later, Linda was back in my driveway. This time she had reinforcements. A man in his 60s with a clipboard stood beside her, looking uncomfortable. Zachary, this is Robert Hendricks. He is the HOA compliance inspector. I had never heard of an HOA compliance inspector, but I shut down the machine and walked over. Mr. Owens, Robert said, his voice apologetic. I have been asked to do a noise measurement of your equipment. Would you mind running it for a few minutes while I take readings? Not at all. I started the processor back up and watched as Robert walked around my property with a decibel meter. Linda stood in my driveway with her arms crossed, confident she was about to be vindicated. After 5 minutes, Robert shut off his meter and walked back. Mrs. Morrison, the readings are well within acceptable limits. At the property line, I am getting 72 decibels. That is quieter than the traffic on the main road. Linda's mouth opened and closed. That cannot be right. Let me see that. Robert showed her the meter, and I watched her face cycle through denial, anger, and finally calculation. She was already working on her next move. Fine, she said. But we still have the issue of commercial vehicles. Mr. Owens regularly parks commercial trucks on the street, which is a violation of Section 8. My truck is parked in my driveway, I said, and it is registered as a personal vehicle. What about your delivery trucks? They park at my commercial yard on Bradley Avenue. They only come here to load, which takes maybe 30 minutes, twice a week. Robert looked at his clipboard. Mrs. Morrison, I do not see anything here about investigating vehicle complaints. You asked me to measure noise levels, which I have done. Linda's face went red again. Thank you, Robert. I will handle the rest. After he left, she turned to me. You think you are clever, do not you? Hiding behind lawyers and technicalities. But this neighborhood has standards, Zachary. We moved here to get away from industrial operations and commercial businesses. I will not let you turn this into some kind of lumber yard. Linda, I process firewood in my driveway a few hours a day. I am not running a sawmill. I am not causing problems for anyone. Why are you so determined to shut me down? Because you are violating the spirit of our community guidelines, even if you have found loopholes in the letter of the law, and I will close those loopholes." She walked away, and I stood there wondering what I had done to make this woman my enemy. I kept my property neat. I did not have loud parties. I did not even use my workshop after 7 p.m. because I knew the sound carried. The next 2 weeks were tense. I operated my processor every afternoon, always keeping detailed logs of my hours and noise levels. Linda drove by multiple times a day, sometimes stopping to take more pictures. I got 2 more violation notices via email, both of which Marcus helped me respond to with detailed rebuttals. The night before the board meeting, I prepared a presentation. I had photos of my setup, noise readings, copies of my business licenses, and testimonials from my neighbors on either side saying they had no issues with my operations. I had even gotten a letter from the city zoning office confirming that my home-based business was fully compliant with all municipal codes. The board meeting was held at the community center at 7 p.m. When I arrived, there were about 20 people in the room. Linda sat at a table at the front with 4 other board members. I recognized 2 of them. Patricia Vance, who lived 2 streets over and always seemed reasonable, and Donald Murphy, who mostly kept to himself. Linda called the meeting to order and worked through several routine items before getting to the agenda item labeled Owens Commercial Operation Violation. "As many of you know," Linda began, "Mr. Owens has been operating industrial equipment on his residential property in clear violation of our community standards. Despite multiple warnings, he has continued this operation, showing blatant disregard for the peace and quiet of our neighborhood." She clicked through a slideshow of photos showing my processor from various dramatic angles, complete with ominous captions like "industrial equipment in residential zone" and "commercial operation threatening property values." When she finished, Patricia spoke up. "Linda, I have read Mr. Owens's responses to the violation notices. He seems to have pretty solid documentation that he is in compliance. Have you consulted with our HOA attorney about this?" Linda's jaw tightened. "I have reviewed the CC and Articus extensively. The intent is clear." "But what does our attorney say?" "I have not felt it necessary to incur legal expenses when the violation is obvious." I raised my hand. "May I present my information?" Linda looked like she wanted to refuse, but Patricia nodded. "I think we should hear from Mr. Owens." I walked to the front and connected my laptop. For the next 15 minutes, I went through everything. The CC&R provisions allowing home-based businesses, the noise measurements showing I was well below any threshold, the city permits, the neighbor testimonials. I kept it factual and unemotional. "I understand Mrs. Morrison's concerns about maintaining neighborhood character," I concluded. "But I have invested significant time and money into ensuring my business complies with every rule and regulation. I am not asking for special treatment. I am just asking to be allowed to continue doing what the CC and Articus explicitly permit." There was silence when I finished. Then Donald spoke up. "I drive past Zachary's place every day on my way home. I have never thought twice about his operation." I did not even know what that machine was until Linda brought this up. "I live right next door to Zachary," said a woman I recognized as Mrs. Chen. "He is the quietest neighbor I have ever had. I hear the Johnson's lawnmower more than I hear his wood processor." Linda's face had gone from red to purple. "This is not about noise. This is about the principle. If we allow one person to run a commercial operation, where does it end? Next we will have auto repair shops and manufacturing plants." "That is a slippery slope fallacy," Patricia said quietly. "And it is not supported by evidence. Zachary has a small, quiet home-based business that is fully compliant with our CC and RTCS. I do not see grounds for violation. I agree, Donald said. I move that we dismiss the violation notice. I second, Patricia said. Linda looked stunned. We should at least modify the CC and RTCS to prevent this type of operation in the future. That would require a vote of the entire community, Patricia said, and it would take months. For now, I think we should vote on the motion to dismiss. The vote was 4-1, with only Linda voting to uphold the violation. I tried not to smile as I gathered my materials and left. As I walked out, I heard Linda's voice, sharp and angry, saying something about calling an emergency session. I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. 3 days later, I got a call from Eric Martinez at Cascade Heating and Cooling. He was one of my biggest clients, and he sounded stressed. Zachary, we have a problem. I just got off the phone with one of my best customers, and she is refusing delivery because the wood is coming from you. Why would that matter? Apparently, she is some HOA president who has a personal grudge. She told me if I use your company, she will cancel her contract and tell everyone in her neighborhood to avoid us. And she has already started. I have gotten 3 cancellation calls this morning. My stomach dropped. Linda Morrison? That is the one. Look, I like doing business with you. Your product is great and your prices are fair. But this woman is costing me money. She is telling people we supply substandard firewood from unlicensed operators. I am fully licensed. I can send you all my documentation. I know. But perception matters in this business. Can you just talk to her? Work something out. After I hung up, I sat in my truck trying to control my anger. This was beyond HOA business now. Linda was actively interfering with my livelihood, spreading lies about my business to damage my reputation. I called Marcus. That is tortious interference, he said immediately. If she is contacting your clients and making false statements that cause you to lose business, you have grounds for a lawsuit. I do not want to sue her. I just want her to stop. Then we send a cease and desist letter. Make it clear that her actions are illegal and that continued interference will result in legal action. Sometimes that is enough to make people back off. The letter went out that afternoon. By evening, I got a call from Patricia Vance. Zachary, I just heard about what Linda has been doing. I want you to know that it is completely unacceptable and does not represent the board. Donald and I are drafting a formal censure. She has overstepped her authority significantly. I appreciate that, but the damage is already done. I have lost at least 4 clients because of her lies. Document everything. If you need the board to provide statements supporting your business reputation, we will do it. That night, I could not sleep again. I kept running scenarios in my head. I had worked too hard to build my business to let one vindictive HOA president destroy it. But I also did not want to spend the next year locked in legal battles. The next morning, I was loading my truck for a delivery when my phone rang. It was Derek. Boss, you are not going to believe this. You know how we supply wood to Cascade, Willamette Valley Heating, and Mountain West Comfort Systems? Yeah. Guess who all 3 of those companies supply equipment to? Who? Your HOA neighborhood. I am looking at a delivery schedule right now. Cascade Heating and Cooling has contracts with at least 15 houses in Ponderosa Heights, including Linda Morrison. I stopped loading. Say that again. Linda Morrison has a contract with Cascade Heating. They installed her pellet stove last year, and they supply her firewood as part of a service package, which means every piece of wood she burns this winter is coming from us. A slow smile spread across my face. Are you absolutely sure about this? Positive. I am looking at the delivery manifest. Her address is right here. She is scheduled for a half-cord delivery next week. I called Eric Martinez. Eric, it is Zachary Owens. I need to ask you something. Do you have a service contract with Linda Morrison on Pine Ridge Court? There was a pause. Let me check. Yeah, we do. She is one of our pellet stove customers. We provide wood and maintenance. Why? Because she is the one who has been blackmailing you about using my firewood. The silence on the other end was heavy. You are kidding me. I am not. She has a vendetta against me because of an HOA dispute, and she has been trying to destroy my business. But apparently, she has been burning my firewood all along without knowing it. Eric started laughing. It started as a chuckle and built into a full-belly laugh. Oh, this is perfect. This is absolutely perfect. Here is what I am thinking, I said. Do not cancel her contract. Deliver her wood exactly as scheduled, but when you do, make sure she knows exactly where it comes from. I like the way you think, but are you sure? She is probably going to explode. Let her. She has been making false statements about my business, costing me clients. At least this way, she will be forced to confront the reality that she has been relying on my company whether she likes it or not. Okay. Her delivery is scheduled for Thursday. I will make sure to mention it. I spent the next few days in a better mood than I had been in weeks. I processed wood, made deliveries, and caught up on paperwork. I did not tell anyone except Derek what was coming, but I could barely contain my anticipation. Thursday afternoon, I was in my workshop when I heard a car screech to a stop in front of my house. I looked out to see Linda Morrison storming up my driveway. Eric's truck was parked in front of her house across the street, and I could see him and his helper unloading firewood. You! Linda shouted when she saw me. This is your doing. I walked out to meet her. My doing? What are you talking about? That delivery driver just told me this wood came from your company. You put him up to this, did not you? This is harassment. Linda, I supply firewood to Cascade Heating and Cooling. They have a contract with you to provide firewood. I did not put anyone up to anything. This is just business. I do not want your wood. I refuse to accept it. That is between you and Cascade. I just supply to them. If you have a problem with their sourcing, take it up with Eric. She looked back at Eric, who was standing by his truck with his arms crossed, then back at me. You planned this. This is revenge. No, Linda, this is you learning that your actions have consequences. You tried to destroy my business with lies and intimidation. You cost me clients, and all along, you have been using my product without even knowing it. Maybe instead of trying to shut me down, you should have asked yourself why 3 of the biggest heating companies in Bend all choose to buy from me. I will cancel my contract. That is your choice, but you will still need firewood for the winter. And you will find that most heating companies in this area source from me or my competitors who are twice as expensive. Good luck with that. She stood there for a moment, breathing hard, her face cycling through emotions. Then she turned and marched back to her house. Eric caught my eye and gave me a thumbs up before finishing the delivery. I thought maybe that would be the end of it, that Linda would back off, lick her wounds, and we could coexist in tense but peaceful détente. But I had underestimated how deep her need to win ran. The following Tuesday, I got a notice from the City Code Enforcement Office. Someone had filed a complaint alleging that I was operating a lumber yard without proper commercial zoning. The notice required me to appear before the zoning board to demonstrate compliance. I called the number on the notice and spoke to a tired-sounding inspector named Greg. Mr. Owens, I will be honest with you. This complaint has HOA dispute written all over it, but we still have to investigate. Can you walk me through your operation? I explained everything. My home-based business license. My commercial yard on Bradley Avenue where my inventory and trucks were kept. The fact that I only processed wood at home in amounts needed for immediate delivery. You sell directly to customers from your home address. No. All sales happen from the commercial yard. I do not even have signage at my home address. And you do not store large amounts of inventory there. Just what I am processing for immediate delivery, maybe 2 or 3 cords at a time. Greg sighed. This sounds like it is probably fine, but I still have to come out and do an inspection. Are you available Friday morning? Friday morning, Greg showed up with a clipboard and a camera. He was in his 50s, with the weathered look of someone who had spent too many years mediating neighbor disputes. Nice property, he said, looking around. How long have you lived here? 3 years. He inspected my workshop, took measurements, and looked at my current wood inventory. The whole process took about 45 minutes. Mr. Owens, I am not seeing anything that violates city code. You have a legal home-based business. You are not exceeding storage limits, and you are not running a retail operation from a residential address. I will submit my report recommending no action. Can I ask who filed the complaint? He consulted his clipboard. A Mrs. Linda Morrison. She claimed you were running an unpermitted lumber yard with heavy truck traffic. She is my HOA president. We have had some disagreements. Greg nodded knowingly. I have dealt with about 100 cases like this. Someone gets mad at their neighbor, files code complaints hoping the city will do their dirty work. Waste of everyone's time. He handed me his card. If you get any more harassment from her, document it. If she files false complaints, that is actually a violation of city ordinance. After Greg left, I sat down and made a list of everything Linda had done. The baseless HOA violations, the false statements to my clients, the frivolous code complaint. Marcus had told me I had grounds for a lawsuit, but I had been hesitant. I did not want to be that guy, the one who sues over neighborhood disputes, but this was affecting my business and my livelihood. It was time to stop being nice. I called Marcus and told him everything. Okay, he said. Here is what we do. We file a lawsuit for tortious interference, defamation, and harassment. We include the HOA as a defendant as well, since she was acting in her capacity as president when she initiated contact with your clients. We ask for actual damages for lost business, plus attorney fees. Will this make things worse? Possibly in the short term. But right now, she thinks she can keep escalating without consequences. A lawsuit makes it real. It also creates a legal record if she continues. The lawsuit was filed on November 19th. Linda was served at her home 3 days later. I was not there to see her reaction, but I heard about it from Patricia Vance, who called me that evening. Zachary, I need to tell you that the board held an emergency meeting this afternoon. We voted to remove Linda as HOA president, effective immediately. I sat down heavily. What happened? Once we found out she had been contacting your business clients and filing false complaints with the city, it was clear she had exceeded her authority and exposed the HOA to legal liability. The other board members and I agreed that we could not allow her to continue acting in an official capacity. I have been appointed interim president. I never wanted any of this, Patricia. I just wanted to run my business. I know, and I am sorry it got this far. Linda has always been intense about HOA matters, but this crossed too many lines. For what it is worth, the board will be issuing a formal statement clarifying that your business is in full compliance with all HOA regulations, and that the previous violation notices were issued in error. The lawsuit moved slowly, as lawsuits do. Discovery dragged on through December. Linda hired an attorney who filed motions trying to get the case dismissed. Marcus methodically countered each one. Meanwhile, winter arrived in force. Bend got hit with an early cold snap in mid-December, with temperatures dropping below zero for a week straight. My phone rang constantly with orders. Cascade Heating and Cooling tripled their usual order, as did my other heating company clients. I was processing wood 16 hours a day, running my processor from dawn until well after dark. None of my neighbors complained. In fact, Mrs. Chen brought me hot coffee one afternoon and told me she appreciated knowing there was someone in the neighborhood ensuring people had heat. On December 20th, Eric Martinez called me. "Zachary, I've got a weird situation. Linda Morrison called asking for an emergency wood delivery. Apparently, her pellet stove is having issues and she has run through her supply faster than expected. She specifically asked if the wood could come from anyone except your company." "What did you tell her?" I told her the truth. "That we source exclusively from you during peak season because you are the only supplier who can keep up with demand." She hung up on me. "Is she going to freeze?" "No," she called back an hour later and placed the order, but she sounded furious. Christmas came and went. I spent it with my parents in Portland, grateful for a few days away from the drama. When I got back, I found a letter from Patricia waiting for me. "Dear Zachary, on behalf of the Ponderosa Heights HOA board, I want to formally apologize for the harassment and baseless accusations you have endured. The board has voted to reimburse you for any legal fees incurred in defending against improper HOA actions. We have also amended our complaint procedures to prevent similar abuses in the future. We value having you as a member of our community. Sincerely, Patricia Vance, Interim HOA President." The check that came with it was for $5,000. It did not cover all of Marcus's fees, but it was a meaningful gesture. In late January, Linda's attorney approached Marcus about settling. They offered to drop their defense and accept a judgment that included a written apology, a permanent restraining order preventing Linda from contacting my clients or interfering with my business, and $15,000 in damages. "Should we take it?" I asked Marcus. "That is up to you. We could probably get more if we go to trial, but trials are expensive and time-consuming. This gives you everything you really need: an admission that she was wrong, legal protection against future harassment, and enough money to cover your losses." I thought about it for a day, then agreed to the settlement. We signed the papers in early February. The written apology arrived a week later. It was a single page, clearly drafted by her attorney, formally retracting all statements Linda had made about my business and acknowledging that I was a licensed, legitimate operator. She was required to send copies to Eric Martinez and to any other clients she had contacted. I framed it and hung it in my workshop. Linda kept a low profile after that. I would see her occasionally, getting her mail or driving past. She never looked at me, never acknowledged my existence. Patricia told me that Linda had resigned from the HOA board entirely and was considering moving. Spring arrived, and with it, a different kind of work. I switched from firewood processing to supplying lumber for construction projects. My business was thriving. The legal victory, ironically, had given me credibility. Eric Martinez referred 3 new heating companies to me, all of whom wanted to work with the supplier who stood up to HOA harassment. In April, I saw a "for sale" sign go up in front of Linda's house. Patricia confirmed that she and her husband were relocating to Arizona to be near their daughter. "Do you feel bad?" Derek asked me when I mentioned it. "A little," I admitted. "I never wanted to drive her out of her home, I just wanted her to leave me alone." "She made her choices," Derek said. "You just defended yourself." The house sold quickly in late May. A young couple with 2 kids moved in. They introduced themselves the first week, friendly and normal. The husband asked if I did custom lumber orders. We ended up having a beer in my workshop while I showed him some live edge slabs I had been working on. The HOA continued under Patricia's steady leadership. She was re-elected as president in the annual meeting, running unopposed. One of her first initiatives was to revise the CC and Artiques to make the rules around home-based businesses clearer and fairer, with input from several lawyers to ensure they were reasonable. By summer, the whole drama felt like a distant memory. My business was doing better than ever. I hired a fourth employee and leased additional space at my commercial yard. I was processing enough wood to supply half the heating companies in Central Oregon. One hot afternoon in July, I was cleaning my workshop when I found the original violation notice Linda had sent me back in October. I almost threw it away, but instead, I tucked it into a folder with all the other documents from that period. The lawsuit papers, the settlement agreement, the apology letter. It was a reminder that standing up for yourself matters. That sometimes you have to fight, even when it is uncomfortable and expensive and stressful. Because the alternative is letting bullies win. My phone rang. It was a new client, a heating company out of Redmond asking about wholesale pricing for firewood. As I talked through the order details, I looked out my workshop window at my processor, sitting quietly in the corner where it belonged. "Yes," I said into the phone. "I can definitely handle that volume. When do you need delivery?" Business was good. Life was good. And Linda Morrison was someone else's problem now, probably terrorizing an HOA in Phoenix about the proper shade of beige for garage doors. I finished the call, made a note in my order book, and went back to work. There was wood to process, and winter would be here before I knew it. The following weeks settled into a comfortable rhythm. I processed wood, made deliveries, and actually got to know my neighbors beyond the tension that had defined my first 3 years in Ponderosa Heights. The young couple who bought Linda's house, Jake and Maria, became friends. Their kids liked to watch me work sometimes, fascinated by the machinery. One Saturday in August, Patricia organized a neighborhood barbecue at the community center. It was the first one I had actually attended, having avoided HOA social events during the Linda era. About 40 people showed up, and I was surprised by how many came up to tell me they had appreciated me standing up to the overreach. "She made everyone nervous," Mrs. Chen told me, loading her plate with potato salad. "We were all afraid to do anything in our own yards without checking with her first. You fighting back made the rest of us realize we did not have to live like that." Donald Murphy pulled me aside later in the evening. "I wanted you to know. I am sorry I did not speak up sooner. I watched Linda target you for months and told myself it was not my problem. I should have stopped it earlier." "You voted to dismiss the violation," I said. "That mattered. Still, I could have done more." The whole evening felt like a reset, a chance to be part of a community instead of in conflict with it. I stayed late, helping clean up and talking with neighbors I had previously only waved at. Fall arrived, and with it, the return of peak firewood season. But this year was different. This year, I knew my place in the neighborhood was secure. I ran my processor without looking over my shoulder, processed my orders without worrying about violation notices. Eric Martinez's business had exploded. The promotion he had run over the winter had been so successful that he had opened a second location. My contract with him had tripled, which meant I had to expand my operation significantly. I hired 2 more workers and bought a second processor. The new one was even quieter than the first, though I did not really need it to be anymore. I set it up in my commercial yard on Bradley Avenue, keeping the original at home for smaller processing runs. On October 23rd, Exactly 1 year after Linda had first confronted me about my processor, I was working in my driveway when Patricia walked over with a box. "Anniversary present," she said with a smile. Inside was a small plaque that read, "Ponderosa Heights Resident of the Year, Zachary Owens, for demonstrating integrity and perseverance in the face of adversity." "The board voted unanimously," Patricia said. "We wanted you to know how much we appreciate you being part of this community." I was not sure what to say. A year ago, I had been fighting for my right to run my business. Now I was getting awards from the same organization that had tried to shut me down. "Thank you," I finally managed. "This means a lot. You earned it." Not just by fighting back, but by being gracious after you won. A lot of people would have held a grudge. You just went back to being a good neighbor. After she left, I looked at the plaque for a long time. Then I went inside and hung it on my wall next to my business licenses and Linda's framed apology letter. Together, they told a complete story. Conflict, resolution, and moving forward. Winter came again, as it always does in Central Oregon. This time I was ready. My inventory was stocked, my processors were running smoothly, and my client list was longer than ever. I supplied wood to families all over Bend, helped keep people warm through the coldest months, and built something I was proud of. On a snowy evening in December, I was sitting in my workshop doing paperwork when my phone buzzed with an email from Marcus. The subject line read, "Case closed." "Zachary, just wanted to let you know that all final paperwork from the Morrison settlement has been processed and filed. The restraining order is permanent and enforceable. Congratulations on seeing this through. You handled yourself with class throughout. If you ever need anything, you know where to find me. Best, Marcus." I closed my laptop and looked around my workshop. The walls were lined with tools I had collected over years of building this business. The air smelled like sawdust and pine. My processors sat ready for tomorrow's work. This was what I had fought for. Not just the right to operate equipment or run a business, but the right to build something meaningful without being torn down by someone else's need to control. I turned off the lights and headed into my house. Tomorrow would be another day of processing wood, making deliveries and serving clients. But tonight, I let myself feel satisfied with how far I had come. The street was quiet as I looked out my front window. Lights glowed in windows up and down the block. Somewhere out there, families were staying warm with wood I had processed and delivered. It was not glamorous work, but it mattered. And that, more than any legal victory or HOA award, was why I had refused to quit. Linda Morrison had tried to stop me because she saw my business as a threat to her vision of what the neighborhood should be. But she had been wrong. A community is not about everyone conforming to one person's standards. It is about people doing their thing, contributing what they can, and respecting each other's right to do the same. I had learned a lot over the past year, about standing up for yourself, about choosing your battles, about the difference between fighting to win and fighting for what is right. But mostly, I had learned that sometimes the best revenge is not revenge at all. It is just living well, doing good work, and being part of something bigger than yourself. The snow continued to fall outside, blanketing the street in white. Inside, my house was warm. My business was strong. My conscience was clear. And across the street, in the house where Linda Morrison used to live, Jake and Maria's kids were probably getting ready for bed, excited about building snowmen tomorrow. Life goes on. Seasons change. And in the end, the people who build things will always outlast the people who just tear them down. I poured myself a drink and raised it in a silent toast to that truth. Then I sat down to plan next week's deliveries, ready for whatever came next. The story could have ended there, neat and satisfying. but life rarely ties itself up that cleanly. In January, about 3 months after Linda moved away, I got a letter from an attorney in Phoenix. Not Marcus, someone I had never heard of. The return address was from a firm called Sandstone Legal Group. I opened it with curiosity rather than dread. The settlement was final, legally binding. There was nothing Linda could do to resurrect the case, but the letter was not from Linda. It was from her husband, Robert Morrison. Dear Mr. Owens, you do not know me, but I feel compelled to write to you. My wife Linda has struggled with control and anxiety issues for many years. The situation with you and your business was the culmination of behaviors that had been escalating for some time. Our move to Arizona was not just about being near our daughter. It was also about getting Linda into a better mental health support system. She has since been diagnosed with obsessive-compulsive disorder and anxiety disorder, and she is getting treatment. I want you to know that I am deeply sorry for the pain and stress she caused you. Her actions were wrong, and no diagnosis excuses them. But I thought you deserved to know that she was not just a mean person. She was someone who was unwell and took it out on you. I hope you have found peace and success in your business. If there is anything I can do to make amends beyond the legal settlement, please let me know. Sincerely, Robert Morrison. I read the letter 3 times, my feelings complicated. On one hand, it did not change what Linda had done. Mental illness might explain behavior, but it did not erase the consequences. On the other hand, it gave context I had not had before. I thought about responding, then decided against it. Sometimes the best closure is just accepting what happened and moving forward. I filed the letter with the others and did not think about it much after that. February brought a cold snap that pushed demand for firewood through the roof. I was working 18-hour days, and my entire crew was running flat out. Eric Martinez called me in a panic one morning. Zachary, I have a problem. We have 50 installations scheduled this month and we are running low on wood. Can you bump up our order again? How much do you need? 20 cords in the next 2 weeks. I did the math. It was possible, but it would push me to my absolute limit. I can do it, but I will need to run my processors basically non-stop. Are you okay with evening deliveries? Whatever you need. You are literally keeping my business running. Those 2 weeks were brutal. I processed wood from dawn until well after dark. Derek and my other employees worked overtime. My processors ran so hot that I had to pause every few hours to let them cool down, but we made the deadline. 20 cords, delivered on time, exactly to spec. Eric sent me a bonus check and a handwritten thank you note. You are the reason I stay in business, the note read. Thank you for always coming through. March brought a break in the cold and with it, a chance to catch my breath. I took a weekend off for the first time in months and drove out to Smith Rock for some hiking. The desert landscape was beautiful, and the silence was a welcome change from the constant roar of processors. On the trail, I ran into a couple I recognized from the neighborhood. We chatted for a while, and they mentioned that Patricia Vance was stepping down as HOA president at the end of her term. She did a great job, the wife said, but she says it is time for someone else to take over. You should run. I laughed. After everything I went through with the HOA. I do not think so. That is exactly why you should run. You understand what happens when the HOA overreaches. We need someone who will keep things balanced. I thought about it on the hike back. Running for HOA president had never crossed my mind. I had fought against the HOA not to become part of it, but maybe that was the point. Maybe the best person to lead an organization was someone who understood its capacity for harm and was committed to preventing it. When I got home, I called Patricia. Would you support me if I ran for president? There was a pause. Zachary, I think you would be excellent. You have shown good judgment, you understand the rules, and you genuinely care about the community. Yes, I would absolutely support you. Even though I sued the HOA. You sued Linda and the HOA when both were acting wrongly. That shows integrity, not hostility. If anything, it proves you will stand up for what is right even when it is hard. The election was in April. I ran against two other candidates, both of whom had been on the board for years. I did not campaign hard, just sent out a letter explaining my vision. An HOA that enforced reasonable rules fairly, that supported rather than restricted residents, and that focused on building community rather than policing behavior. I won with 63% of the vote. My first meeting as president was surreal. I sat at the head of the table where Linda used to sit, looking out at board members and residents. Patricia was there, now serving as treasurer. Donald Murphy had been re-elected as secretary. First order of business, I said. I want to establish a formal appeals process for any violation notices. No one should face fines without a fair chance to respond and be heard. The board voted unanimously to approve it. Over the next few months, I worked to reshape the HOA into something better. We streamlined the rules, eliminating vague provisions that gave too much discretionary power to whoever was in charge. We created clear, specific guidelines with graduated enforcement that focused on education before punishment. We also started positive initiatives. A community garden. A tool library where residents could borrow equipment instead of everyone having to buy their own. A neighborhood watch that actually built connections instead of just reporting violations. The changes were not universally popular. A few residents thought I was too lenient, that the HOA should enforce stricter standards. But most people appreciated the shift toward balance. My business continued to grow. By summer, I had 8 employees and was supplying wood and lumber throughout Central Oregon. I bought the property next to my commercial yard and expanded my operation significantly. In June, Eric Martinez called with interesting news. Zachary, I am opening a 3rd location. Boise, Idaho. Would you be interested in supplying that market? That is 4 hours away. I know. But I trust your quality, and I do not trust anyone else enough to build a new market. I will make it worth your while. We negotiated a contract that would increase my business by 40%. It meant hiring more staff, buying more equipment, and significantly expanding my logistics operation. But it was an opportunity I could not pass up. By fall, Mountain View Timber Supply was no longer a small operation. We had 15 employees, 4 delivery trucks, and contracts throughout Oregon and Idaho. I kept my home workshop, but it was now mostly for personal projects. The business had outgrown my driveway. October 23rd came around again, 2 years after Linda's first violation notice. The HOA threw a party at the community center, ostensibly to celebrate Halloween, but really to mark how far the neighborhood had come. I stood talking with Jake and Maria when Patricia approached with a glass of wine. 2 years, she said. Quite a transformation. I never expected any of this, I admitted. 2 years ago, I was just trying to keep my business alive. And now you are running the HOA that tried to shut you down. Life is funny. It is. But I am glad it worked out this way. I have learned a lot. What is the biggest lesson? Patricia asked. I thought about it. That conflict is not always bad. Sometimes it is necessary to force change. Linda was wrong in what she did, but the whole situation exposed problems with how the HOA operated. If none of that had happened, we would still be running things the old way, and someone else would eventually have gotten hurt by it. So you are grateful to her. I would not go that far. But I can see how the struggle led to something better, not just for me, but for everyone. The party went late into the evening, Kids in costumes ran around collecting candy. Adults talked and laughed. It felt like a real community, not just a collection of houses bound by restrictive covenants. As I drove home that night, I thought about the journey I had been on. From angry confrontations in my driveway to sitting at the head of the HOA board. From fighting for my right to exist in the neighborhood to helping shape what that neighborhood would become. It had not been easy. There had been sleepless nights, stressful confrontations, legal bills, and moments when I wondered if it was all worth it. But looking back, I would not change any of it. Sometimes you do not get to choose your battles. They choose you. And when they do, the only real option is to stand your ground and fight for what is right. I had fought for my business, my livelihood, and my place in the community. And I had won, not just in the legal sense, but in building something better than what existed before. The next morning, I was in my workshop when Derek called. "Boss, we just got a huge order. A development company building 200 homes outside of Bend. They want us to supply all the framing lumber and they want to offer firewood packages to buyers. This could be our biggest contract ever. Send me the details. Let us make sure we can handle the volume before we commit." After we hung up, I looked around my workshop. The plaque from the HOA hung on the wall, along with my business licenses, certificates, and yes, Linda's framed apology letter. Together, they told the story of what I had built, not just a business but a reputation. Not just survival but success. Not just fighting back but creating something better. I grabbed my coffee and headed out to start the day. There was work to do, orders to fill, and a community to help lead. The processors were ready. The wood was stacked and the future was wide open. And somewhere in Arizona, I hoped Linda Morrison had found peace. Her battle with me had been a symptom of deeper struggles. I bore her no ill will. In a strange way, she had pushed me to become stronger, more resilient, and more committed to doing things right. Life is not about avoiding conflict. It is about handling it with integrity and using it to build something worthwhile. That is what I had done, and that is what I would keep doing. The sun rose over the Cascade Mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Another day, another opportunity, another load of wood to process. I fired up the processor and got to work, content in the knowledge that I had earned my place, defended my rights, and helped build a community worth being part of. And that was more than enough.